Welcome, everybody, to Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick, Igniting Leadership Excellence. I'm Rick, and this is my co-host, Emily.
Hi.
We are in season 2, and this is episode number 48. And our topic today is leadership in the hot zone. Now, listen, you do not have to be a firefighter to listen to Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick. For those of you who have been listening, you've heard me say this before, that we know for a fact that we have other people from other professions that are listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
And so, next podcast after this is going to be our follow-up interview with retired Fire Chief Arjuna George. If you haven't listened to his first interview, please go back and tune into that one. It was recorded for November the 20th. And we had a good time talking to Chief George. And he had so much information that
Mhm.
I wanted to carry it over into a second interview. So the second interview from Chief George will air on December 18th, and that will bring season number 2 to a conclusion. And while I'm thinking about it, for those who are listening, if you are a leader and you're interested in being in our podcast, please reach out to me. My email is in the show notes, and I'd love to talk to you to find out if you're a fit for the podcast. And again, you don't have to be a firefighter to be interviewed, because we have
Yeah.
interviewed a few others who are not in the fire service at all. But as I said, today our topic is leadership in the hot zone. And I recently delivered a class of this title to a fire department. And hot zone is personnel issues, and personnel problems pop up. And for us firefighters, a lot of the personnel problems start to pop up in the fire station. Firefighters spend a lot of time with each other, and certainly there could be performance issues along with personnel problems, and at times they can mix. A performance issue can slop over now into a personnel issue, but I have also seen personnel issues then impact performance as well. A performance issue can be addressed through training and
Mhm.
drills, and more training and more drills. Personnel issues, though, are time consuming, they're more difficult. They can suck the life out of the crew, the life out of the shift, the life out of the department. And far too many times personnel issues go overlooked. Now, Emily, you worked in human resources in another city, and so I'm sure you have seen some of these things.
Yes, absolutely.
And would you agree that
Daily
they,
basis.
yeah, would you agree that they can be very time consuming?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
especially when they get up to the level of human resources.
Yes.
And also, too many times, some of these personnel issues make the headlines. Most recently, this year, when unfortunately Charlie Kirk was assassinated, there was a lot of jerks that got on social media and were posting things that were completely, totally inappropriate. Of these people were applauding the death of Charlie Kirk. Hey, folks, if anybody's applauding the death of somebody else, you need to have your head examined, because that's just flat out sick.
Mhm.
But a lot of that stuff that made it out to social media, uh, employees were punished. And in one case, a fire chief in a major city here in the United States was removed from duty for his inflammatory comments that he was making on social
Mm.
media. Now, one of the things that I addressed when I was teaching that class, Emily, is, hey, handle issues down at the lowest level as possible. Don't overlook them. But for those of you who are in supervisory positions, hey, company officers, you see behavior that is not congruent with your organizational policies and procedures, and somebody's doing something that is incorrect, is wrong, they're misbehaving, you have an obligation as a leader to say something and to stop it and handle it right there. And then also, we have so many people, Emily, in our society today, that they wear their feelings on their sleeves. somebody says something to them, and then rather than addressing the issue right there, saying, "Hey, I don't appreciate that. I don't appreciate what you said." What do?
They just um, keep it to themselves and form a grudge most of the time.
Or they run to right straight to HR.
Yeah, or that too.
Yep, run right straight to HR. So, Emily, you've got some interesting information here to share with us.
Yes, we want to ask, what is the significance of 61 years? So in 1964, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act into law. Since that time, other laws have been enacted at the federal, state, and local levels addressing discrimination and employment law. Over a 61-year period, we still have employees who are explosive, fiery, toxic, and corrosive. I think we'll forever have that,
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah.
Um, although laws and regulations are necessary, the 61 years has proven that controlling human behavior and actions cannot be handled through legislation.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's so true.
Absolutely. How many laws are on the books and have been written
Yeah.
at the federal level, state level, and at the local level, at organizational levels of what people can and can't do, what they can and can't say, and so forth and so on, like that. Yeah, we cannot legislate human behavior.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Emily, I know you feel this way too. We're firm believers that many of these issues can be handled through leadership,
Yep.
strong leadership. And when there's a breakdown there, the leadership needs to step in and address the issues. And for those people who may be listening that, are the ones that, well, somebody said something or did something that you didn't like, and you're running right straight to HR. Hey, you know what? You, you're lacking courage. You're lacking the courage to address the issue. And now, most of the time, when I was dealing with personnel issues and somebody was coming to me, I said, "Hey, you know, did you talk to your officer first?" Well, no. And what was the reason you didn't talk to your officer? And usually it came, well, I'm afraid to. Well, why are you afraid? Is the officer threatening you with bodily harm, retaliation, or anything? No, it's just this fear.
Mhm.
And so the people on my shift learned that if they were coming to me with an issue with somebody else on their crew, and this is what I would hear. "Hey, chief, I'm having an issue and I don't want you to fix it. I just need some advice on how to address it."
Hmm.
And was more than willing to sit down with somebody, Emily, and say,
Mhm.
"Okay, let's talk about this and let's, come up with a plan for the best way for you to address this first." Now, I did have a situation that erupted where a firefighter came to me after that one wasn't getting any satisfaction from their company officer. And the firefighter said, "I'm going to go talk to the chief."
Hmm.
And so it wasn't done behind the officer's back. The officer knew that the firefighter was coming to me. And ultimately, it was handled. The situation was handled. It was an issue between the firefighter and the engineer, which is the driver operator. And when I spoke to the company officer and asked him, "Why didn't you come to me sooner?" He said, "I didn't want you to think that I couldn't do my job."
Hmm.
This summer, I had coffee with a friend of mine, and he was from a completely, totally different department, different region. He was sharing with me, he's a chief officer of a personnel issue that bubbled all the way up to HR that could have been handled at the fire station level. And when he asked the lieutenant, "How come you didn't come to me?" That lieutenant said the exact same thing.
Hmm.
"Well, I didn't want you to think I couldn't do my job." And so, man, these things could have been handled,
Yeah.
Emily, so much sooner.
Yeah.
Folks, here's some interesting information from surveys last year, 2024, and this year in 2025. And a report titled U.S. Employee Engagement Sinks to a 10-year low.
Hmm.
That was a 2024 Gallup survey, found that only 31% of those employees surveyed indicated that they were engaged at work.
Wow.
Only 31%. And I've been staying up on these statistics, and it's dropping more and more each year.
Yep.
That's that's rather disturbing. Only 31% of the surveyed people said that they were, actually engaged. So what's that say? The math, 70%, 69, right? 69%.
You're asking me?
Yeah, saying they're not engaged. And so the Society of Human Resource Managers reported that 48% of vacation time went unused in 2024.
Huh.
Yeah, Emily, what happens when people don't take their vacation time? What happens to them? How does that impact them? And how do they feel?
Yeah, I think they just become disconnected. They're tired, they're worn out. They um I'm losing I can't think of the word off the top of my head that I'm trying to think about, but that describes it.
Yeah, and what's the reason for them not taking vacation? Is it, well, I want to bank my vacation, I want to save my vacation? Is it because it's an overtime issue, people are out sick or injured, vacations get canceled? And but you're absolutely right. When people are not taking that time off, it starts to impact
Yeah.
them mentally and physically, emotionally,
Yeah.
and then that's going to carry over to work
Burnout.
where, yeah, burnout,
That was the word.
absolutely. Yeah, burnout. Yeah, what Arjuna George was talking
Hmm.
about in his book, Burnt Around
Yeah.
the Edges. So,
Yeah.
Emily, you got a few more statistics here too.
Yeah, in a Forbes survey, they found that 66% of the employees they surveyed said they were, oh, that's so funny. They were burnt out.
Yeah, yeah, that they were, wow, 66%.
Which makes sense. I mean, and there's a lot that are workaholics too that don't
Yeah.
really value vacation time. And in a lot of work environments, vacation time is not encouraged
Wow.
either.
Yeah, when you're saying that it's not encouraged, does that indicate that there's a culture that exists in that organization that everybody should be constantly working?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or if like the boss works a certain amount or their vacations are only like work vacations, they expect their direct employees to have the same mentality or to bring work on their vacation.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right.
So,
And then also
yeah.
the bosses who have that mentality are sending a message to the people further down the line is, well, this is expected of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are expected to work through your lunch or
Yeah.
whenever there's a training, it's expected that it's going to be a working lunch.
Yeah.
8 hour training, 9 hour training. Well, we're going to add in a working lunch on top of that, and people don't get a break. They don't get a time to step away and be able to, digest what they learned in the morning. They're going through a working lunch,
Hmm.
which I think you could probably tell by the tone of my voice. I'm not a big fan of the working lunch concept. Now, there
Yeah.
are things called a lunch and learn. And
Hmm.
generally, what I have seen with those are voluntary in
Yeah.
nature. You bring your lunch into,
Yeah.
and you hear somebody give a presentation. And I've gone to a couple of those.
Yeah.
But again, that was voluntary on
Yeah.
my part. Now, in 2025 Global Leadership Report, employees stated they were looking for hope, trust,
Mm.
compassion, and stability.
Yeah. Yeah, and that same report found that employees have 7 expectations of their leaders. That's interesting, 7.
Yeah.
Build relationships, develop people, inspire others, communicate clearly. That's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Lead change, think critically, and create accountability.
It
Wow.
isn't that interesting, Emily, when we take a look at that, those 7 categories right
Yeah.
there. Some of these we have talked about on this podcast
Yeah.
now for
Yeah.
2 years. Building relationships, certainly
Yeah.
developing people. I mean, we have really
Honed in on that
down,
one.
yeah, a lot on developing people.
Yeah.
And communicating clearly is another one. So, folks, those of you who are regular listeners, you may say, "Man, you guys really harp on these things." Well, look at this; these things are coming out in surveys. It's what people are expecting
The pain
from,
point.
they're pain points.
Mhm.
Absolutely, they're pain points. It's what
Yeah.
people are expecting from their leaders, leading change.
Yeah.
Wow. Hey, for those of you who are in leadership position, you're in supervisory positions. When change comes down the pike, that you need to be able to take your people through that and not let them just wander all over the place and create their own stories, which lead to rumors and
Yeah.
makes things a whole lot worse. So, Emily, what in the world does all this have to do with leadership in the hot zone?
Great question. So, a number of factors contribute to personnel problems, and other leaders fail to recognize that they are dealing with perfectly imperfect human beings with a sin nature. We have talked a lot about character on this podcast, like we just said, and many personnel issues are related to a lack of character, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So let's narrow this down to quickly look at four behavior characteristics and generational differences.
Yeah, and when you said that we're dealing with perfectly imperfect human beings, that's a quote that I heard from John Maxwell a couple years ago.
It's funny, I see it on t-shirts now. And
Yeah,
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 kind of like a pop word.
yeah. We want to give credit to where credit is due, and that's why when we reference these statistics and so forth, we talk about where they come from, or if we
Yeah.
quote someone, we reference who made that quote. And so, yeah, narrowing this down through the John Maxwell Certified Leadership Team that I'm a member of, I'm certified as a consultant for the DISC assessment. DISC, DISC, and identifies four behaviors that are in every last one of us. They're in me, they're in Emily, they're in those of you who are watching on YouTube, and they're in those of you who are listening. And the
Mhm.
DISC assessment that we use in the Maxwell team, when it comes back, it's a 30-page report.
Yeah.
And it really focuses a lot on communication, but there's also a page that's proprietary because there's a number of DISC assessments that are out there
Yep.
on the market. But there's a page that's proprietary to Maxwell, and it's called the Power Disc. And that one right there shows our inherent gift strength areas. And I absolutely love that one. And I've done it. And Emily, you've done it as
Yeah,
well.
I found more value in the John Maxwell one than I did in the one that I had to take at the city. And two, the John Maxwell one talks about like your communication styles and how to communicate with the different um disc people.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
the styles,
I
yeah.
don't believe that was in my report at the one that I first did
No.
at the city. It felt like I was put more in a box at the city one, whereas the John Maxwell one didn't really put me in a box. It just explained my why I may think the way I think, why I work the way I may work, and how to communicate with others. And so I found it way more valuable.
And if I recall correctly, you were reluctant to do the disc assessment for a while, weren't you?
Yes, because I don't like being put in a box. And I felt like that at the city. I had to do all these dumb employee personality assessments, and I just hate being put in a box. And everyone would just go around like, "Oh, I'm this way because I'm a D, or I'm this way because I'm an Enneagram 6." And it's just like, okay, get it together.
Yeah.
Like you just use that as an excuse, and I hate that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but you're right, Emily. People can use these things as an excuse, and that's not what it is designed for.
It's a tool.
Yeah, it's a tool. It's a tool. And so you're probably saying, okay, Rick, you're saying disc. What in the world does this stuff mean? Well, the D stands for dominant. Someone who seeks results, they're active. Oftentimes they can be demanding, they can be controlling.
Kind of like a type A personality.
Yeah, triple type A. Yeah,
Yeah.
triple type A personality. And yeah, there's a video that I have available to me through the Maxwell team, and the first time I showed it was to a fire department when I was teaching this particular segment right here, leadership in the hot zone. And one of the characters in there, he comes across that way, very demanding, and he says, "People, I value people, and well, I actually value people who give me results." So those people, what's the I? Influencers, they seek a friendly environment. undisciplined, talkative, and disorganized. Now we're chuckling because we have a family member, another daughter, and Emily's sister. And I don't think she would mind me saying this, but on the assessment, she maxed out on the I. And of all the assessments and debriefs that I have done, I have never seen anybody peg that thing like she does it. And that's definitely her.
Hmm.
It's the person with the personality that they want a very friendly environment, and they can be very talkative, but there are also the people that if they meet you, 5 seconds later, you're Facebook friends and
Hmm.
all of that. And then there's the S, or the steady person who's seeking a team environment. They're generally loyal, they're resistant to change, and they can be slow to start. But once they get started, they're going. Now, I'm just hitting some of the, you know, generalized characteristics. There's certainly more that goes along with these. And then C, the C is the correct. Sometimes people call it compliant. And by that, it doesn't mean that, it's aye, aye, skipper, I'm going to march off the end of the bridge, and jump. No, it's not that. It's the people who they like to be correct. They're very detail oriented. They love logic. They like facts. They can be more introverted, and which sometimes comes across as being antisocial or moody
Hmm.
people. And there's introverts, extroverts, and a term that I learned here probably about 6, 7 years ago was an ambivert.
Hmm.
And that's someone who possesses both of those characteristics. Hey, folks, the introverts, or that could be someone who's got the C style, that correct style. Now, they may seem withdrawn, but or a little bit snobbish when they're not. They're just introverted.
Yeah.
Now, all four of these characteristics are in each and every one of us. And when someone does the assessment and it gets plotted, there's a midline. And so if anything is above, any of those four characteristics above, it's referred to as a high. Like I am a high C. I'm a CS. And a precisionist is what it is referred to. And guess what, Emily? Aren't
Ye-
you as well?
Yeah, I think I am the CS.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you are. Yeah, you are a CS. And so, as part of this report that comes back, and it talks about, do's and don'ts of communication, and it also, highlights tips and tactics on how to communicate.
Hmm.
Well, for Emily and I being, both of us being a CS, uh,
Communicate great.
yeah, we communicate great.
Yeah.
We communicate greatly with each other. Hey, listen, folks. Uh, you want to learn more about this and how I can help you with it. You know, I do the disc assessment and do the disc debrief. I can email you the code and then we can sit down. And if you're local, we can do it in person. But I've done these over Zoom as well.
Yeah.
And so please check out my website, for more information on that. And I encourage it because everybody can learn how to communicate better. John
Hmm.
Maxwell's book, Everyone Communicates, Few Connect, he points out the fact that we're not born communicators. It's something that we have to learn. And certainly the public school system is not teaching how to
No.
communicate. They're teaching a lot of garbage, but they're not teaching
Yeah.
how to communicate. So, Emily, you mentioned that there's other assessments, and
Hmm.
one of them is emergenetics, and I did that before a class I took back in 2008, and that's on thinking styles,
Hmm.
four types of different thinking styles. And had you ever taken the Myers-Briggs personality assessment?
I did a long time ago. I think like when I was starting to enter the workforce.
Okay.
I don't remember what it assessed me as, but
Yeah, I have mine someplace. It's been several years since I've done that, and it's tucked away someplace. And then you did mention the Enneagram. I've done a little bit of research into that, and well, be blunt, I'm not a fan of that. I question the origins of it.
Mhm.
And but you said that a lot of people like to get stuck into that box and they say that
They do.
they're,
They use their number. It's all on social media, like, oh, because I'm a two, I'm this way, or, this is how I'm responding because I'm this.
yeah. And
Like, ugh.
so let's stop and talk about that for, a few minutes. As people with any of these assessments, somebody can start to use them as an excuse.
Yeah.
The hell, I, as a C, a high C, a precisionist, I could get out into the weeds. I could bore people to death when I'm teaching, and then just turn around. Oh, well, the reason I do that is because I'm a high C.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and now that becomes an excuse. And like Emily,
Your crutch.
yeah, and a crutch. Yeah, like Emily said, somebody says, "Well, I'm a Enneagram 6. That's why I do this." Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Those excuses do not excuse behavior. They do not excuse inappropriate behavior. They do not excuse bad actions
Yep.
in the workplace. Those are just excuses. And just last night I heard about somebody who was justifying their behavior because they said, "Well, my disc profile says I'm this."
Mm.
That's like, okay, no, no, not no, not at all.
Well, I think that applies, like, it's getting into the weeds a little bit, but I think it also applies to like the love languages, even
Mm,
spiritual gifts.
yeah, yeah,
Like we are strong in certain things, but even with like love languages, like maybe gift giving is not your strong suit, but everyone needs to give gifts,
yeah.
so it's not an excuse to use that you're not the way you are because like you may not have a stronger
Hmm.
gift or a stronger disc personality or
Yeah.
anything like that. It's an opportunity, it's a tool, it's an assessment. It's to maybe learn a little bit more about like who you
Mm,
are, but it's not meant to have you be stuck in there.
yeah.
It's
And
meant for growth.
yeah, and I want to remind everybody, we're talking about leadership in the hot zone. And working with people is leadership in the hot zone. From a firefighting perspective, depending on what part of the country you're in, uh, it certainly will dictate the type of shifts that you're working. Here in our area of northern Colorado, the bulk of the fire departments are working 48 hours on, 96 hours off. There's a shift a system referred to as the modified Berkeley. It's 24 on, off, 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, and then 96 hours off. Denver Fire is working 24 on, 48 hours off. There's fire departments that work a, a 12-hour shift, and then another platoon comes in and they work a 14-hour shift. And so when we break it down, and what I talked about with this fire department I was teaching recently, to look at the percentage of emergency calls you respond to. And that is going to vary from fire department to fire department and even from station to station and shift to shift. Just because it's a big city fire department doesn't mean that every station is constantly running calls. There are
Mhm.
some stations in the bigger cities that are slow, and then you get to a smaller city and they could be running more calls than the slow station in the big city. And so what I my point is you average out how much of your shift time is spent running emergency calls. And then look at the rest of that time that's spent in the station, that's spent doing project work, that's spent doing station chores, that's spent out in the public doing public education, pre-planning or company level inspections. You know, and certainly, there's that sleep time if you actually get any sleep time. And there's that time where firefighters are together. You need to pick up some hardware to work on a project and head down to the hardware store. Everybody loads up in the rig and goes down there. It's not like working in a library or finance and
Or the grocery store.
or the grocery store. Yeah, you're locked up with each other. And these personnel problems, they pop. This is where they typically pop up. Yes, yes, they can pop up from the scene of an emergency or a drill when one firefighter gets ticked off at the officer or vice versa. But in my experience over the years, and certainly 15 years as a battalion chief, a lot of this stuff is bubbling up in the fire station, and unfortunately, some of it is due to a lack of character. So it absolutely is leadership in the hot zone.
Yeah.
And for firefighters, for your company officers to say, I don't need to know this stuff. Yes, you do. Yes, you do need to know this stuff because it's not all about pulling up in front of a burning house, a burning building. It's not all about cars rolled over with patients trapped. It's about leadership. And officers, if you are not leading your crews, then you have abdicated your authority. So,
Hmm.
Emily, let's talk a little bit about age and generations. And, folks, also through the Maxwell Certified Leadership Team, I've had the opportunity, I think, 4 times now to hear a man speak. And this guy is incredibly intelligent, and his name is Tim Elmore. And for those of you on YouTube, I'm going to show you this book here, as long as I don't bash the microphone. It's called A New Kind of Diversity, Making the Different Generations on Your Team a Competitive Advantage. Here's the cover of that book. And again, for those of you who are listening, Tim Elmore wrote this book, A New Kind of Diversity, Making the Different Generations on Your Team a Competitive Advantage.
Yeah.
When I first heard the title, I thought, oh no, here we go. Here's some more of that diversity type stuff. But this is solely related to age. And Emily, could you cover how, and I want to emphasize, folks, before Emily's going to cover this breakdown here, this is in the workplace. This particular book right here that Tim Elmore wrote is targeting the workplace.
Yeah. So he breaks it down into the generations. So if you have the builders generation, which is from 1929 to 1945. Then we have our boomers, which is 1946 to 1964. I'll add a note, it's the boomers that are retiring right now, too. So that has made a huge impact in the workplace. We were dealing with that at the city because the millennials were coming in and the boomers were here for like 40 years, 30 to 40 years, and the millennials are only staying like 3 to 5 years.
Interesting
That's
observation.
the little tidbit I'm going to add there. Then we have Generation X, which is still in the workforce, 1965 to 1982. And now we have Generation Y, or also known as the Millennials, which is 1983 to 2000. And then the newest generation is Generation Z, 2001 to 2015.
Yeah, and then also, Tim Elmore does not, he briefly mentions Generation Alpha, which is 2016 to 2024, and they're not in the workplace yet. And then the latest one now is being identified as Generation Beta that's starting this year,
Interesting.
and yeah, in 2025.
It's like their big
But
experiment.
when Elmore wrote the book and he talked about the builders from 1929 to 1945. When I first came into the fire service, I was in the fire service with World War II veterans,
Mm,
Korean War veterans, Vietnam era veterans. And the World
yeah.
War II era veterans, they hung around the fire service they hung around the workforce, period,
Yeah.
for an awful long time. But now they're not in the workforce
Mm,
and they're dying off. And I can't remember the number of World War II veterans that die every day.
mm,
And so what we do now have in the workforce are those last four categories that Emily talked about: the boomers, Gen X, the millennials, and the Gen Z. And Emily, you got a little bit more information there, and then let's circle back and we will talk a little bit about tenure.
Yes. Yes. So Elmore wrote in his book, each of the four generations still at work offers a variety of gifts to the others. For instance, the baby boomers offer life experiences, awareness of pitfalls, and life coaching for younger generations. Generation X is realistic perspective, pragmatic wisdom, resourcefulness, and balance. Then the millennials offer energy, confidence, tech savviness, optimism, and social connections. Generation Z is more entrepreneurial. Well, let's try that again. Entrepreneurial. Entrepreneurs have a quote unquote hacker mindset, cause oriented, social media savvy, and a fresh view.
Yeah. And
Very interesting.
when it was an interesting viewpoint that you had there talking about the boomers
Mm.
that are retiring. They're the ones now that are leaving the workforce and being replaced by the millennials
Yep.
and Gen Z.
And they
What?
don't value their job as much as the boomers valued theirs. It's just different. It's kind of a mentality of like, what's next for me? They don't just want to stay forever.
Yeah, and we do have to be careful that we don't tag everybody that
It's
way.
true. Yeah.
Yeah, because I have worked with people who fall into that millennial category and they do want to stick around for a long time.
Hmm.
So that's one of the things we do have to be careful of because I come from the boomer generation. And for a while, back, when the China virus popped up and the things that were taking place in the country, we became the target. Oh, everything, all the problems in the United States, all the problems in the world because of you boomers. Well, let's get real. Things go much deeper than that. One thing I did see from a millennial that had been on my shift. I got a phone call one day and said, "Hey, Chief, can you come out to the station? I need to talk to you." It's like, "Yeah, okay. Well, what do you want to talk about?" "Well, I'll tell you when you get here." It's like, okay. So I drive out to the station. I'm asking myself, what's this all about? I'm thinking, what did I do? Did I do anything wrong? What's going on? So I get out there and he says, okay, he says, well, let me get my captain, and we'll go in the back room here. And so we did. We went back and he'd been with us for a few years. And he says, well, I just want to let you know, I'm going to be resigning from the fire department. Okay. And what's driving that decision? Well, I want to travel and see the world. It's nothing with the fire department. I like being a firefighter. And he says, it's nothing that you've done, nothing that anybody has done. And he said, I like it here. We got a good fire chief. It's a good fire department. I just want to travel the world. We want to go to Vietnam. Me and my friend want to go to Vietnam. I looked at him. I says, man, I says, it wasn't that many years ago when men your age went to Vietnam and came back in body bags. And I said, well, no, we just want to see the world. I
Mm.
reaffirmed with him, okay, you understand that once you walk out the door, you just can't come back. Do you understand that there is no reinstatement rights to our fire department? Now, I understand that. Okay. Do you understand that if you want to come back to work for us, you're going to have to go back through the application process, back through the interviews, and back through the academy again?
Oof.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure. I understand that. That was the first one
Wow.
that I've seen.
Mhm.
And then talking to my friends in the fire department, and when I travel around, visit other fire departments, doing teaching, I'm hearing some of these same things. And it's like they're coming in and they are not sticking around.
Yeah.
And a couple of weeks back now, I was having a conversation with a company officer and he was expressing frustration with a young firefighter on his shift and on his crew. And he keeps telling me that he wants to have a voice and keeps asking, well, what do I need to clean the toilets? Well, first of all, and his response to that was, well, you got to clean the toilets because I'm the lieutenant and I'm telling you, you got to clean the toilets. And it's like, hey, folks, for those of you who aren't in the fire service, uh, we got to keep the fire station clean. There is not a maid service that company. The admin sections are completely, totally different. But in the fire stations, it's the living quarters. Yeah, we got
Mhm.
to get out there. We got to run the vacuum cleaner, sweep the floors. In the day, we had to, buff the floors, mop, wax, buff the floors, and we got to clean the crappers. Otherwise, if you don't, it's going to look like a porta john on a construction site. We live here. We live in the fire station. We sleep in the fire station. We eat in the fire station. And so I asked this particular lieutenant, I says, have you asked this firefighter what he means by I need to have a voice? And he said, no, I haven't. I said, you might want to do that. I said, because it's going to come up again.
Yeah.
And I said, and so is this thing. So here's where Dr. Tim Elmore gets involved again. I was listening to him on a Maxwell call for a mentorship type call, and he did a teaching. I love listening to this guy, folks. I mean, he's incredible. He's absolutely incredible. His knowledge on these generational differences and what comes with each one. It's fascinating human behavior.
Hmm.
But I mentioned to him what I just shared with you about this lieutenant and his young firefighter who falls into the Gen Z category. And Tim Elmore said that he had created an acronym that would be good for this lieutenant, and not only that lieutenant, but others to use, called A leg, ALEG. And the A stands for asking. It makes people feel valued.
Mm.
The L is listening, makes people feel heard. E is empathizes, it makes people feel understood. And the G is guiding, it creates a bridge for mentoring.
Mm.
Now I'm going to repeat that again. A leg, ALEG. A is asking, it makes people feel valued. L is listening, makes people feel heard. E is empathizes, makes people feel understood. And G is guiding. It's creating a bridge for mentoring. Now, this has nothing to do with pandering to somebody, or patting them on the backside saying, now, it'll all be okay. Mommy will be along in a little bit. It's not catering to them. It's leadership. It's leadership. And leadership is communication. And the asking, listening, empathizing, and the guiding is all part of communication.
Yeah.
Communication. I knew a man at one point that had the same rank as me, and we would get together for coffee periodically, and he would complain about the young firefighters on his shift,
Mm.
saying they won't do what I tell them to do. I show up in the station and they constantly want to ask me questions. So you answer them? So no, I tell them I'm the battalion chief, and they just need to listen to me. Like,
Mm.
eh,
That's not going to create respect.
yeah, that you know what? When I was the age of those guys, that didn't work for me. And
Mm.
I'm not a Gen Z or a millennial. You know, and that's human. That's human behavior. That stuff of, well, I'm the boss and you're going to do it because I told you to do it. You know,
Yeah.
you don't know what you're talking about. When I was growing up, I would hear, you young kids, you don't know what you're doing. Yeah,
Yeah.
that just carries over. Now I hear people my age. I've heard when I was in my 30s, I heard people my age say, these kids today, they don't know what they're doing. And we got to be careful about just slapping these labels
Yep.
on people. Communicate, communicate, communicate.
Yep.
Communication is the source of so many problems, Emily.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, anything you'd like to add? I appreciate what you were saying there, your experiences from human resources.
Yeah. No, I think we covered quite a bit in this episode. Didn't kind of scratch the surface because you can go a lot
Oh yeah.
deeper into this that, all this impacts the workplace, the fire station, and organizational culture.
Yes.
But we'll have to dig deeper in another episode.
Yeah, culture. Oh yeah, culture could be 3, 4 episodes all
Mm-hmm.
all by itself. Well,
Yeah.
folks, thank you for listening today. This is episode number 48. We've been talking about leadership in the hot zone. If you found this episode or any of our episodes to be useful, please like, subscribe, and share. You can also visit my website at fireofficerleadershipacademy.com. The link is in the show notes. Learn more about the services I offer, including the DISC assessment, which I talked about. You can access my weekly blog through my website. We're also on LinkedIn. My email is in the show notes as well. And again, if you are listening, you're in a leadership position. You don't have to be in fire. I would love to be able to interview somebody in the law enforcement world who is in a leadership position. We've got a couple people that have reached out to us that are military veterans. We're working on finalizing, getting them scheduled to come in and talk about their experiences. And,
Yeah.
for right now, until that is finalized, I won't say any more about that because it's too easy for things to fall through. So this episode is airing on December the 4th. Our last episode of the year will be December 18th with Arjuna George.
Well,
And, Merry Christmas, everybody.
yeah. Merry Christmas. Wow.
Hey, thank you. And until next time, we'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.